Amy.
I'm Sarah.
And together.
We're unscripted.
All right, so interesting topic today. I'm calling it.
Usual.
Well, yeah, I guess. I'm calling it the in-between because we're going to be talking about what happens not like just during sleep, but when we're waking up and when we're falling asleep. There's some weird things that happen. And apparently there's a name for it. I had no idea. But it is called, oh gosh, I'm going to butcher it again. It's called hypnagogic hallucinations. So there's hypnagogic, which there are hallucinations that take place before, like right as you're drifting off into sleep. And then there's the hypnopompic hallucinations, which are, I can't talk. It's the exact same thing, but it happens as you're waking up. So,
that's experience to me. I've experienced that once or twice that I know of. But I did not know it had a name. I thought I was just going crazy.
I know. I never knew what that was. Like, it'll happen to like my mom. She'll tell me, oh man, the weirdest thing, came to my mind when I was like waking up this morning. And, we didn't really know what to make of it. And I just decided to Google. And Abby is like moving her butt up against my chair. And it keeps rocking me in the camera. So just ignore it. She's an odd little dog. It's okay. So anyway. So yeah, so it says that the hypnagogic hallucinations, AI kind of claims this. So if you Google it, it'll say the same thing. It says these are common and usually harmless, and they involve visual experiences, auditory, and sensory or physical. So when I kind of did more research and broke it down, it says that like 86% of the hypnagogic or hypnopompic hallucinations are visual. And with the visual, it says a lot of them involve moving shapes, colors, and images, maybe similar to looking through a kaleidoscope, which mine never was like that, but I'll get into that. And that the images are generally standalone and they're not related to like a story like, a dream would be. They just kind of like 1 second, bam, they're in your face. And then there's 8 to 34%, supposedly. I really don't know how they're getting these statistics, because if you think about it, come on, they're not going to get in our head. It's just reported, I guess. They're auditory. So sorry. The auditory, it says they generally involve background sounds, like the sound of a phone ringing, a doorbell, people's voices talking, or animal voices. And that these sounds are not usually associated with the story either, like, would be in a dream. And then 25 to 44% are physical, which are considered the sensory, which would be, they're also considered like tactile hallucinations. And they refer to when a person feels bodily sensations, like they're not actually occurring, like the feeling of falling.
That's happened all the time to me. I feel that all the time. I always feel like I'm falling. In the middle of sleep, I'll wake up thinking I'm falling off a cliff, and I'm literally in my bed. It's insane.
Right. I know. So that had me like thinking about all kinds of stuff. But it could even come in the form of weightlessness. So you just kind of like you feel like you're floating, which, yeah, it's nice when it's happening. It's not scary. It's the falling one that I get, though. And it says, this is what I think is weird. Well, actually, I'm going to come back to that. Tell me about your experiences with this. Do you get the auditory, the visual, or?
When I am falling asleep, I'm always hearing things that aren't actually there. So, but again, with my background, I don't know if it's scientific, like you're explaining, or if it's more of a spiritual level, only because I hear things, like I hear whispers and talking, and sometimes I feel like I can hear the electrical outlet, like the electricity running in the walls. It's so bizarre. Yeah, I don't know what that is. So I get the auditory ones. I have seen like shadows and symbols and things like that as I'm falling asleep. But I've learned to control those by, making myself think of things while I fall asleep instead of just letting my brain do its own thing. I'll make my brain think of like flowers or something
I
to
knew
fall
you were gonna
asleep.
say flowers. I swear I knew you were gonna say flowers, which is
Well,
weird. We didn't talk about
that's
this.
always my go-to because mom would always, talk about her pink and yellow flowers, and it always, just brought me a sense of comfort. So I make my brain think of pink and yellow flowers, mostly tulips. I love tulips, so I'll like
Mhm.
pop those up in my head, and those will help calm me down enough to fall asleep. But for a while there, I was just seeing like symbols, like circles and weird shapes, and like squiggles. It was weird. And then as for the physical stuff, I didn't do too much physical stuff except for feeling like I was floating in the sky, like you were saying. I felt like I was floating, and I could hear things while I was floating, like I could hear people talking in the background. It was really weird. Kind of to me, I thought it was like an out of body experience or something, but I didn't actually see myself sleeping. It was something that felt like it was really happening to me. So I don't know. That's really unique and different. So I'm glad you kind of have a scientific name for it. I don't know what it was.
Yeah, but there's also like the part of it that I don't think is scientific. So let me finish the scientific part, and then I want to talk about some other stuff that we'll get
Well,
into.
have you ever experienced it? Have you ever experienced any of that?
I have, but mine, I'll talk about mine after I finish this because you'll see when I get there.
Okay.
So I thought this was interesting. It says that for the sensory portion of the tactile, hypnagogic hallucinations, it says sometimes people even sense that another person is in the room with them. Like somebody, even if they have somebody in the room with them, this is like an unknown person that they'll sense.
Mhm.
Um, and then it said, because I was like, huh, what does that sound like? But
Mhm.
then it even said that this hallucination is commonly associated with sleep paralysis, which can occur with hypnagogic hallucinations. And then I went
Wow.
deep dive mode because the hypnagogic and the hypnopompic, like I said, hypnagogic is as you're in between wake and sleep. So you're drifting off into sleep, and then you can have these images. Same thing, you're in between sleep and waking up. So when you have the hypnopompic hallucinations. Sleep paralysis tends to happen during REM, which is
Mhm.
neither during those times. It's usually right in the middle, sometimes 2 to 5 a.m.
Mhm.
So I was like, so how can they really truly be,
Connected.
associated? Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
going to make me think what we're going to get into in a minute here. I tend to have really messed up sleep schedule. So like my REM is all off. So like I usually have to wake up at like 2, 3 in the morning, and I'm like, I
Well,
gotta pee.
tell the animals of yours to leave you alone.
So what?
I said, tell your animals to leave you alone.
No, Abby's fine. She doesn't bother me or anything, but I just have to pee. So,
Oh.
and then I'll, get up and then I'll come back but usually I've noticed right before I have to wake up for work or something, like I will have vivid dreams. So it tends to be right before 7 a.m., which is really late for REM sleep. So
Mhm.
mine, I can see why I have problems with sleep paralysis. Sucks, but I get it. But I don't have I have had some of the hypnagogic,
Mhm.
where like, you're just about to fall asleep and then like you jolt awake because
Uh,
you feel like you're about to fall. I hate that, of course.
Mhm.
People listening, they're like, oh yeah, I've had that happen to me or whatever.
oh, I'm sure everybody's had that experience at least once or
Annoying.
twice in their life.
Yes, yes. And that made me think of another thing too. Like, why is it that the images or the sensations that are commonly reported are scary? Like, I mean, like, okay, because going back when it said that like the visual hallucinations, they were like looking at a kaleidoscope, or it could be like colors or patterns. I don't ever see colors or patterns. I mean,
Mhm.
there are some that say it could be people's faces or things like that. That's what I'll see, but it won't be something normal. It'll be like
Mhm.
a zombie
Distorted?
demon face. Yeah.
Right,
And I'm like,
distorted. Mhm.
really? Why? Like, why can't I see the kaleidoscope? Actually, that might trip me out. I don't want to see the kaleidoscope. But why? I'm doing something different. But why scary?
I don't know. That's a really good point, though. Like, a lot of people get nervous when they see things that are unusual. Especially, remember when we were talking about the disfigured faces? We were
Oh,
talking
on
about
the
the
demonic
disfigured
podcast?
the demonic podcast. So if you see that when you're waking up or going to
Yeah.
sleep, you see that. So, I mean, naturally, your fear instinct in your brain is going to kick in, especially if you're not used to seeing that kind of stuff. And if it
Right.
starts for no reason. So I can see why people would get nervous about it and it would probably be scared because, you don't expect your brain to be like, oh, look, there's this demonic face in my dream. What the hell's going on? And is it
Yeah,
actually here or is it actually in my head? It
that's
makes
what I
people
was gonna
wonder.
say. There's
Yeah, it makes
always
you wonder. Is it in your head or is it like really happening? You never know.
yeah,
It's really hard to tell.
I know. That's what I was thinking. I was like, it's always like that too. There's always that blurred line,
Mm-hmm.
between science and something,
Spirituality, yeah.
yeah. And it's weird.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, why is that? Why can't something just be cut and dry, black and white? Why do we
Mm-hmm.
always have like, well, it actually could be these three other things? Like, you
Well,
know,
we wouldn't be humans if it was straight up black and white. We wouldn't be who we are. Our human brains do funny things. The human brain is probably the most amazing and fascinating thing in our body. The biggest, most amazing part of us is our brain. So our brain can make us do or feel or see anything. So, yeah. So I could definitely see how people would get scared, but we never know. You never know because of our free will and our own different personalities and spiritualities. We don't know what's going on. I don't believe science all the time. Sometimes I will, but when it comes to seeing crazy faces of things, I don't think that's science.
well, see, it'll even happen to Johnny. Like, and he does not like horror at all. You know that.
Right.
If he watches something horror, it's because I force him to. But he'll even like
Good
try
for
to
you.
go
Keep
to
it up.
I'm saying. So he'll like, be jolted awake and he'll be like, man, I just saw like this, chick with like the zombie flesh coming off her, face. And I'm like, see, I don't know what that is, but I have it too. So now at least I can kind of put a name to it because I don't think
Right.
he's
Okay.
necessarily having, any kind of issues that you and I have had before, like other people. But like I said, that there's a really fine line.
Between science and spirituality, yeah, absolutely.
And then it made me think too, I told you about this. So, I want to say it was probably like 4 years ago or something. I actually went to a chest specialist because I was worried that maybe I had like sleep apnea because I would wake up choking, like
Mm-hmm.
choking, like I guess this is going to sound really crazy. The only way I can explain it, it's like as if like you were to have something like small and thin, like a piece of thin lunch meat or something. And like maybe if you fell asleep, which I don't do, with it in your mouth, and like maybe if you woke up, that's what it feels like every time it's not like you're
Mm-hmm.
choking on spit or water or somebody's like pushing down on you. It's like I'm choking on like a small foreign object or something, but I'll wake
Mm-hmm.
up and I'll be like, and then I talked to my mom about it. She has it too. So I'm wondering if part of that sensory thing, because when I
It
went to
sounds
the
witty.
That's what I was thinking too. I couldn't find anything on it. They talk about like, the sense of falling or weightlessness, but I would think that there'd be other stuff to it. Like there'd be more like maybe you feel something really hot and it wakes you up. Or like in my case and my mom's, we wake up and we'll like be choking. Because when I went to the
Mm-hmm.
pet specialist, everything was fine. And you know what they told me it was? They told me I was having nocturnal panic attacks. And I don't
Oh, that
know what
that
you
actually
do.
makes. I was gonna say that makes sense with you because of your anxiety
Panic.
issues, the
Yeah.
panic issues while you're asleep. I can definitely see that would cause that actually makes a lot of sense with you because you have such bad anxiety. You can't control when your anxiety hits. So when you're asleep and you have a panic attack when you're asleep, that could very well be, one of the reasons you're having the nocturnal panic attacks, and that's why it feels like you're choking on something in your throat. That's a panic attack because when you have yours, you start feeling like you're hyperventilating, you get very, tense and emotional, and you've got like, you're always doing one of these to yourself. So that actually makes a lot of sense. I actually believe the doctors on that one. I think that was a panic attack.
But my mom doesn't have panic attacks, not like I do, not nearly like I do.
She may not have them as frequently as you do, but if you remember correctly, she used to have quite a few when we were little. She was having panic attacks, but they weren't as extreme as yours.
Yeah.
And she was really good at hiding them. But there
Yeah.
were times we would hear a panic attack happening when I was spending the night and stuff. So she could very well have had the nocturnal panic attack.
That to bring that up to her. That's a fun memory. I'm sure she'll thank me for that one. But so
Well,
then
it just makes sense. So
yeah, no, you're absolutely right. So I'll take that into consideration. I think it's a combination of both. I really do. So
yeah, for sure.
but, and then when I was looking up like what can cause, these things to happen, it's kind of like the sleep paralysis thing. It was like, interrupted sleep or poor sleep habits. And then one thing that kept coming up was narcolepsy. I was like, well, I don't have that, knock on wood, but that's like a common thing, yeah, that I guess people with narcolepsy, they have these things or whatever. I don't know, but it kept coming up. And to where like I was like, well, maybe I should read about it, just to see if there are any other like coinciding symptoms. But there really weren't, other than they have some of these episodes or whatever. But
that's more research we can do on narcolepsy. Because I'm sure that's a very fascinating subject too we can learn about.
Yeah.
So we can maybe next time we talk about our mental health podcast.
Yeah.
We could bring in narcolepsy and sleep apnea and we can talk about that. I think that'd be a good way to talk about mental health and things. So
yeah.
And proper sleep.
No kidding. I don't think many of us get that. But then, okay, so all this stuff also had me thinking back to like the auditory hallucinations. Like, remember how I said that people would hear like the sound of a phone ringing or a doorbell, but it's not in like a story mode. It's not like, oh, I should go get that. They'll just, it's a solitary sound or whatever. So I probably have had that, but I know for a fact I have something else. It is called exploding head syndrome. No, it sounds wonderful. But when I looked up the actual definition, like for this, it says it's a rare benign sleep disorder that causes people to hear loud noises like explosions or gunshots. It says it's usually painless and doesn't impact health. And that it says other symptoms of this are flashes of light, I think I spelled it wrong. Hypnic? Is it hypnic jerks? I said hippic. I was trying to write
fast. Yes, it's a hypnic jerk.
Hypnic. And then they said sometimes sweating, shortness of breath, and palpitations. And then it's also known as episodial cranial sensory shock, which that sounds terrifying. I actually like exploding head syndrome better.
It makes it sound not as creepy and scary. Yeah, for sure. So, yes, exploding head syndrome. Oof.
Yeah, but the way it'll happen to me is I'll hear thunder a lot. Of course, why wouldn't I? But it'll be like a really loud, crash of thunder, and I'll jolt awake and I'm like, was that thunder? But it always wakes me up. And sometimes I'll wake up because I see a giant flash. Now that could be sometimes I do wake up and I'm like, oh, and then it's thunder. I'm like, yeah, it's a storm coming. The lightning wakes me up. I'm a very light sleeper. But I think a lot of the times when it happens, it is this sensor, or not sensory, the visual. It's part of the flashing light and stuff. But I had this one really scary experience that made me want to write a short on it. And I was, asleep, and I had my 2 dogs at the time. And I woke up because I heard the doorbell ring. And you know how like after it rings, because it's so loud, you can hear like the echo of it ringing. Yeah. So that was lingering, and I heard the dogs just going off, just bark, 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 like so crazy. And I was like, oh my God, who could be at the door at like 2:00 in the morning? That's terrifying. This is like strangers territory, And so that I jolted up awake, and it took me a second. I was still hearing the ringing, that echo of the doorbell. But I looked at my dogs and they were fast asleep. And I'm like, wait a second, because it was so clear. It was so pronounced in my head.
It was real. And you seriously heard your dog barking, which is what they would normally do if the doorbell was ringing.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, that's really interesting. That's really, really interesting.
Because I knew that's what happened, what made me look up, what that was. That's how I found out about exploding head syndrome. But
Huh.
yeah. So, I mean,
Intriguing.
it's just creepy. It can be really creepy. And I'm not sure why. I don't know if it's what I would like to see if you and I could find people who don't have maybe high anxiety, or maybe they have, a normal life, if that's a thing. What's normal? And,
Yeah, I was gonna say what is normal anymore,
yeah.
but
It's a word in the dictionary, but I don't know what it means. But I'm wondering if like anybody in that category has had, maybe exploding head syndrome, or, one of these hypnagogic or hypnopompic hallucinations. And if they had more of like oh, I woke up because I saw this beautiful flower, or, what their images or sounds would be like compared to maybe somebody like you or I who they tend to be embodied by a lot of fear and anxiety. I wonder if
mm-hmm.
that plays
So
into it.
you hear that, people? We're asking you for your input here. We want to know what you
Calling
have
all
experienced, if you've
non-freaks.
experienced it. Huh?
I said calling all non-freaks.
Calling people who are somewhat normal, even though we don't know what the definition of normal is anymore. Have you guys had any of these types of episodes, and what kind of images or auditory hallucinations have you had in regards to this? So let us know. We're really excited to find that out. That'd be really interesting to see what they say.
And then
So,
leading into what you're going to talk about, I'm wondering, when we do have like these scary images, pop up in our heads or whatever, how to define, what is, the actual hallucination, and what is something like a spiritual attack potentially. Like
okay.
when that happens, like I'm wondering what the defining factor would be, and if somebody wasn't sure, and like how they could rule out by maybe protection before they fall asleep or whatever. So
Oh, for sure. So there are a lot of similarities to what you were talking about and like a spiritual attack. So we've had our previous podcast, which was talking about spiritual entities and attacks that we've all, experienced, as, along with like the sleep paralysis, things like that. So some ideas that you can, or concepts that might be considered more of a spiritual attack as opposed to scientific, is when you completely wake up and you still hear these noises. Like you said, you were still hearing the echoing of the bell in your, or the doorbell in your ear.
Mhm.
So a spiritual attack, normally if it's the scientific version that you're talking about, normally they fade out. But when you wake up, like, and you're physically awake and everything seems normal, but you're still hearing voices or knocks or, things like that while you're awake, those are more likely a spiritual attack or some type of entity just trying to get your attention. Now, entities do know how to influence people's dreams.
Mhm.
So, with that being said, um, it's really hard to tell between the scientific answers and the spiritual answers. Again, our brains are amazing, and for more open-minded people and spiritualists like you and me, we are more prone to the spiritual attacks because we are open-minded, and these things that we're experiencing just don't go away when you wake up or when you completely fall asleep. They're still there. When we were talking about sleep paralysis and having that, huge pressure on your chest,
Yeah.
like a demon pressing on your chest, you wake up and you see this demonic face on you.
Right.
That is
Right.
more than likely a demonic attack. I'm not saying it couldn't be, your brain playing tricks on you, but when you're physically having a panic attack with something on your chest and you physically see something while you're wide awake, that's more of a spiritual attack. If you're hearing knocking on your walls after you wake up,
Think
I'll
of
be
that.
dreaming, huh?
I didn't think of that. That's creepy. Yeah.
Yeah, when you're dreaming, and okay, so there's been times where I've fallen asleep and I was just having a normal dream, nothing freaky, nothing scary. I'm in a house and you hear knocking like a regular knock on your door, right? So in my dream, I go to answer the door, there's nothing there. Kind of freaks me out. I wake completely up. I look, my husband's sleeping next to me, my kids are all asleep, and I come back to lay down in bed and I hear the same knocking I heard in my dream. That is more of a spiritual attack as opposed to my brain saying, this is you in the dream. Now, the demonic attack or the spiritual attack could have started in my dream, but then came out of it with you. So if you're not properly protecting yourself from spiritual entities and things like that, you're more prone to seeing these things like when you're wide awake. So, some of the things that I use to protect myself from letting that happen is dream catchers.
Yeah.
So, dream catchers are amazing. They're an amazing source of protection. So Dreamcatcher, a little bit about the Dreamcatcher history is like the Dreamcatchers were like traditional Native American, mostly Native American, creations, okay? So they were intended to protect a sleeping individual from negative dreams while letting positive dreams through. So, what that does is like positive dreams, according to Native American lore, positive dreams would go through the center of the dream catcher, and the negative dreams would get caught in the web of the dream catcher, and all the positive dreams would float through and down through the feathers, which would then go into the person's brain, their head, to help them sleep and have positive dreams. So that's how the dream catcher would work in the Native American traditions.
Yeah.
Now, besides that, if it were a demonic attack or something like that, Dreamcatcher probably wouldn't work that great.
Really?
Really, because in your dream, it'll help you with your dreams, but it won't really protect you from a spiritual attack, like a physical spiritual attack. That's when other things would come into play. Like, if you were to possibly put protection crystals, obsidian, tourmaline, into the actual dream catcher, that would help. But the traditional ones have just the plain little wooden beads, the feathers, and the web. So they wouldn't actually, like, unless you have those extra protections put in place, or if it was blessed by a medicine man or woman or a priest or something, then that may help with the spiritual attacks, like physical spiritual attacks. But dream catchers were meant for dreams. But if you were to incorporate some of the other protection charms with it, then yes, it can help you fight off demonic attacks, things like that.
Okay.
So, but that brings me to the next point that I wanted to bring up. Dream catchers are great for dreams, but when you're talking about religion and things like that, you go back in history and Christians, and this is not bad-mouthing Christians at all. I was a previous Christian. I get that. But okay, so Christianity believes that dream catchers they go against and they do not provide any type of spiritual protection whatsoever. They're not allowed to protect you. The only thing that protects you, according to Christians and Catholic, is God. Okay? So, and that's fine. God can protect you. But in the Bible, it does not specifically mention the dream catchers. It doesn't actually call out dream catchers as being negative. But it does advise against using objects believed to provide spiritual protection outside of God. So, and then some Christians view dream catchers as cultural artifacts that hold no spiritual power whatsoever. And they can be appreciated for, their beauty and their craftsmanship, because people who make dream catchers are extremely talented. That's a very hard thing to make. It takes me a long time to get my dream catchers made. My daughter can make them way better than I can. Which I could probably show you guys how to make on one of our pods. We can actually show you how to make a mini dream catcher if you want. But the Christians are encouraged to trust God's protection rather than using dream catchers and remove all objects associated with pagan practices. So dream catchers were part of our pagan practices. Native Americans worshipped several gods, goddesses, things like that. Mother Earth, Father Sky, rocks, trees, everything was a spiritual deity. So in that aspect, that is paganism. That's what we were. So they're advised to, don't use any of those things. Christians are. Catholics won't let you use them at all. So they said, yes. So Catholics say dream catchers are objects that are based on superstition. So on the matter of superstition, the Catholic Church states the first commandment forbids honoring gods other than the one Lord who has revealed himself to his people. It prescribes superstition and irreligion. So, according to Catholics, dream catchers are superstition and they are not allowed to be used because that goes against the Ten Commandments.
So do they
The
consider that
law.
like in the same boat as like a tarot deck
Oh yeah,
or
tarot cards are also superstition and in religion. So Catholics are completely dead set against tarot, dream catchers, anything that
yeah.
provides some type of superstition.
Yeah.
They don't talk about it because that
Yeah.
opens up doors that they don't want to go into.
Hmm.
So, but yeah, so dream catchers are great, but they may or may not help with spiritual attacks. So dream catchers are great for keeping good dreams in your brain, keeping the negative ones out. If you were to intertwine them with more divination tools or protection tools, like we were talking about in our last pod, protection tools such as the tourmaline or the obsidian, or even like hematite was a really good one that you can use, or tiger's eye. You can combine those into your dream catchers with those crystals that will help with spiritual attacks. So it
Right.
all depends on how you create your dream catcher in order to do that. So that's pretty much all I've got on that.
You know what that reminds me of? So I'm going to go ahead and say the name because I don't believe it's still in existence today. But, back when I was like a kid, up in Chicago, there was, I don't even know where it was. My mom would know. You might know. But there was this place called Sanctuary Crystals. Is that still in existence? Or I think they changed
No,
their name now. They have a new
no,
owner.
they
Or it's
actually closed down. My husband used to work at Sanctuary Crystals, actually.
nice.
So, Sanctuary Crystals was a tarot shop. It
Mhm.
had a bunch of metaphysical things that they used to promote, spirituality, metaphysical aspects. So, Sanctuary Crystals was absolutely wonderful. They literally had everything you could hope for. My husband used to work for them. He would actually do like tarot readings, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But they are no longer here. But we do have two metaphysical shops that are amazing and where I get all my stuff because I love them. So it is called Synchronicity. It's one place called Synchronicity. It's in Worth, Illinois. So if anybody is interested in learning these things, check out Synchronicity in Worth. It's called Worth
Even
Synchronicity. It's on
online.
Facebook. Huh?
They probably have an online store too.
Right.
So
There's tons of online stores. But Worth Synchronicity is a great, little metaphysical shop, and it's in Worth. And then there's also Just Witchies on Cicero in Alsip. So
okay.
they're really close by. So if anybody really is intrigued and wants to learn more, you could check out those two shops. They are absolutely amazing. And the people who work for them are super nice and they're very knowledgeable. So, but yeah, so I think the Bible biters and all of them would literally, want to get rid of these stores. That'll probably be one of the first things they try to get rid of because of the whole, not having to rely on one God. So,
Yeah. But I remember I was probably like 7, I was young and I'd go with my mom, maybe my dad too, I don't know. But my mom would go for like the tarot readings and she'd, be there for like 45 minutes and I got to look around, I'd have somebody
Mhm.
with me, I'm sure, but times were different back then. You know how it is.
We didn't
But
have to worry about people snatching kids that
well,
much at that time.
yeah, we did, but not to this level. So, but
We had a lot more adults that looked out for us at that
yeah,
time.
right. So, shout out to the Gen Zs, or not Gen Z, screw them, Gen X, right? Our parents are Gen X. Gen Zs are
Yeah,
only younger than us. We're the millennials.
they're
Anyway,
younger than us. Yeah.
so
But
I didn't have a dream catcher.
boomers. Don't forget about the baby boomers. Shout out to the baby boomers. My mom was a baby boomer.
Yeah. So, I got this thing. It was like it came in a pouch, and I don't know if they were called dream people or what it was, but um,
The little guys, the little people
the
things.
little, yeah, they look like little voodoo kind of whatever. But they were just itty bitty little people, and they all had like little thread like jeans or like a thread yellow shirt. Abby is going crazy. I'm so sorry. Stop it, honey. And there would be like 7 of these, little people in this bag or whatever. And the bag smelled amazing. It smelled like, I don't know if there's like lavender, frankincense or whatever, but I think each person you would like have them represent something. So like you take the person out and you'd say, banish bad dreams, or I don't want any dreams of this, or I want good dreams of this or whatever. And then you'd put them all back, in the bag, tie it up and put it under your pillow.
Yep.
I don't know. That's what
And
it
they
made me
would,
think of.
yeah, and it would fight off all the negative dreams, things like that. So again, like I told you before, there's so many different types of tools out there. And the
Yeah.
little poppets is what we are talking about. They're little poppets. So they're called poppets. They're like little, like a puppet, but they're called poppets. They're little minuscule little peoples that you
People.
can, yeah, that you can literally use as to represent whatever. Some people would, how voodoo dolls. They have voodoo dolls that, you can pin, things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever. But they have voodoo dolls, and then they've got these little poppets that you can use to absorb negative energy. So those what you're talking about are the little people, the little poppets in a bag. That you shake it up real good, get all that scent around it, put it under your pillow, and it would help you promote good dreams, provide, positive sleep, things like that. I love sanctuary crystals for that.
Yeah. So I just wanted to bring that up, but that's all I have on that because we can always cover stuff in like another pod, but I wanted to at least describe, the name for these things. And I wanted to say that, just because you have some of these things like happen doesn't always mean that it is the scientific version. I'm not trying to be creepy. I mean, it's your job to help protect people and it's my job to help scare the hell out of people. But
Right. No, you can absolutely it can go one of two ways. You can believe the scientific versions of it, which is probably safer for some people to believe that, but also know that there is another side to it. So it could be scientific or it could be spiritual. So it's a very, very fine line between the two that, you have to learn the difference between the two. But the thing is, sometimes you won't know. Honestly, it's more of a you have to experience it. Yeah, it's trial and error. You have to experience it. You will be able to tell the difference once those things start happening to you. You'll be able to tell the difference between, okay, this is just my brain being stupid, or this is literally something trying to attack me. If you play with Ouija boards and you do protection stones and you do all the spiritual background stuff like I do, you are very much more prone to spiritual attacks because you opened yourself up to them. You could be more closed-minded and do more the scientific version, which is completely cool. And I believe in most of that scientific stuff too. I just think it's a little bit more intense than that. So you could always be, one of them who like the scientific aspects and think that there's a reason for everything. And that's okay too.
Right. So, but we'll get into more of that stuff in like other pods that we have because I can talk. Great. Give me like coffee hasn't kicked in.
For real, we've gonna.
So we've got pods coming up like short. Again, word gone.
We have shorts coming up for our podcast. We're going to be focusing. They're going to be all focused on paranormal experiences because Amy and I have gotten through so many of them. We have so many things we can talk about.
Oh gosh, so many. But I've got one that goes hand in hand with this. I shared my exploding head syndrome, like one of the experience, like the big events that made me realize I've got it. But there's like another, where it was clear that it wasn't, sleep paralysis or something like that. So we'll get into some of that in one of our shorts coming up very soon.
Yeah, in the meantime, again, let us know if you guys have any experiences. Amy, I'm going to have you give us the email so I don't butcher it again, like usual. So shoot us an email and let us know your experiences.
UnscriptedParanormal@gmail.com.
Thank you. So let us know your experiences. Let us know if you've ever experienced exploding head syndrome or if you have any questions about different types of possible spiritual attacks. We can answer those questions too. So let us know if you guys have any questions, any things you want to share with us. We are definitely very much interested in what you have to say. So I know a few of you are willing to reach out, whether it be through Messenger, text messages, in person. Amy's met a few people who have had experiences. So just let us know, and we're really happy and really excited to hear what you guys all have to say.
Yep.
So look forward to our shorts coming up. We're going to start doing those regularly. And today's a special day. We're actually going to do 2 podcasts in one day. So we're going to be doing another one this evening. But we look forward to talking to you about that too. So until next time, I'm Sarah.
I'm Amy. Keep it creepy.
Keep it real. And we'll talk to you soon, okay?